In deserts around the world, ancient tombs lie buried, untouched for centuries, but for those daring enough to go near, a strange pattern emerges. Mysterious deaths, illnesses, and misfortunes seem to follow. Could it be mere coincidence? Or is there something more sinister at play? What is it about these ancient sites that makes everyone hesitate to uncover their secrets? Join us as we explore the eerie truth behind the desert tombs that no one wants to touch. Curse of the Pharaohs. In 1922, a British archaeologist named Howard Carter made one of the most exciting discoveries in Egypt's history, the tomb of a young pharaoh named Tutankhamun. Carter had been searching for this tomb for years, and after many failed attempts, he finally found it in the Valley of the Kings. The tomb had been hidden for over 3,000 years, and it was packed with treasures, ancient artifacts, and priceless pieces of history. Tutankhamun, or King Tut, was only 9 years old when he became pharaoh, and he ruled for just a short time before he died at around 18 or 19. His tomb, untouched by thieves for thousands of years, was filled with extraordinary artifacts that offered an incredibly detailed snapshot of ancient Egyptian life and culture. This made the discovery of King Tut's tomb an event of massive significance to Egyptology, the study of ancient Egypt. Almost immediately after the tomb was opened, strange things began to happen. A legend began to grow around the tomb, which would forever be known as the Curse of the Pharaohs. The curse supposedly stated, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." This warning, written on the tomb's entrance, was said to be a message from the gods, ensuring that anyone who dared to disturb the tomb of the pharaoh. The most dramatic event that fueled the curse legend was the mysterious death of Lord Carnarvon, the British aristocrat who had funded Carter's excavation. Just a few months after the tomb was opened, Lord Carnarvon fell ill and died from an infected mosquito bite that turned into a deadly blood infection. His sudden death shocked the world, and the newspapers quickly seized on the story, claiming that the curse had taken its first victim. This, of course, was just the beginning. It wasn't just Lord Carnarvon who was affected. Several other members of the excavation team, including those who had helped to unseal the tomb, fell ill or met with untimely deaths. Some died under strange or unexplained circumstances, which only fueled the story of the curse. But the curse didn't stop with just the people who were directly involved. The media frenzy grew to include anyone associated with the tomb, including distant relatives of the excavators. People became more and more convinced that King Tut's revenge was real, and this only added to the excitement and fear surrounding the discovery. Nostradamus. Nostradamus is one of history's most famous and controversial figures. Born in 1503 in France, he became renowned for his prophecies, many of which are said to have predicted major events throughout history, including wars, natural disasters, and even the rise of political figures. Over the centuries, people have turned to Nostradamus' writings to find hidden meanings and predictions about the world. Some claim that he foretold everything from the French Revolution to the rise of Adolf Hitler and the September 11 attacks. Nostradamus passed away in 1566, and he was buried in the Church of the Cordeliers in France. The stories surrounding Nostradamus' tomb are rich with claims of misfortune and strange occurrences happening to those who dare to disturb it. Some say that researchers, archaeologists, and even curious visitors who attempted to open the tomb or examine his remains experienced a series of unfortunate events shortly after. In some cases, those who attempted to study the grave or uncover more of Nostradamus' remains were said to have suffered inexplicable bad luck. One of the most famous incidents involved a team of archaeologists in the 19th century who sought to exhume Nostradamus' body. According to some reports, after they opened the tomb, several of the researchers fell ill with mysterious ailments, and the excavation was quickly abandoned. Locals, familiar with the stories of the curse, whispered that Nostradamus himself had placed a protective spell over his final resting place to ensure that no one could disturb it. It was said that anyone who violated his resting place would be doomed to misfortune, and the bad luck that befell the researchers seemed to reinforce these stories. The Karun treasure. The Karun treasure, also known as the Lydian hoard, is one of the most fascinating archaeological finds of the 20th century. Unearthed in western Turkey during the 1960s, this remarkable collection of ancient artifacts includes stunning gold jewelry, ornate silverware, and delicate pottery. These treasures are believed to have belonged to the ancient Lydians, a wealthy and powerful civilization that thrived in what is now Turkey around 700 BC. The Karun treasure was discovered by looters who raided burial mounds near the ancient city of Sardis. These mounds, known as tumuli, were sacred tombs constructed to honor Lydian royalty and elites. The looters dug through these ancient sites, smuggling the artifacts out of the country and selling them on the black market. Eventually, many pieces ended up in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, but as the treasure's fame grew, so did its dark reputation. Almost as soon as the treasure was discovered, rumors of a curse began to spread. The locals in the region where the artifacts were unearthed had long believed that disturbing the tombs of their ancestors would bring misfortune. They warned that the Karun treasure was cursed, and anyone who touched it would suffer terrible consequences. As if to prove the legend true, a series of tragedies befell those connected with the treasure. The looters who first excavated the artifacts experienced a string of misfortunes. One reportedly lost all his money. Another suffered from a severe illness, and others faced mysterious accidents. People began to whisper that the treasure was exacting revenge for its desecration. The curse didn't stop with the looters. In the years that followed, museum curators, buyers, and even lawyers involved in the legal battles over the treasure's ownership reported strange illnesses, financial ruin, and untimely deaths. These events only added to the treasure's dark reputation, and many people began to believe that the curse was real. Taira no Masakato. During the 10th century in Japan, there was a samurai named Taira no Masakato, whose story is one of rebellion, tragedy, and a lasting legacy. Born into the influential Taira clan in the 10th century, Masakato was a warrior of great skill and ambition. But death was not the end for Taira no Masakato. Over time, his story evolved from that of a rebellious samurai to a figure of divine reverence. Locals began to view him not as a villain, but as a protector of the eastern provinces. His spirit was believed to linger, watching over the land and punishing those who disrespected his memory. The legend of Taira no Masakato's curse is one of Japan's most enduring supernatural tales. His restless spirit, some say, harbors a deep resentment toward those who disturb his peace. Over the centuries, numerous calamities have been attributed to Masakato's wrath, from devastating earthquakes to destructive fires. One of the most infamous incidents occurred after the Great Kanto earthquake of 1923, which leveled much of Tokyo. Among the ruins was the Otemachi area, where a small shrine dedicated to Masakato stood. Officials decided to move the shrine to make way for urban redevelopment, a decision they would soon regret. Shortly after the shrine was relocated, accidents and illnesses began to plague those involved in the project. Workers mysteriously fell ill, government officials suffered sudden deaths, and strange phenomena were reported near the shrine's new location. The incidents were so alarming that the project was halted, and the shrine was quickly returned to its original site. This event solidified Masakato's reputation as a vengeful spirit, and many believed that his tomb and shrine must never be disturbed again. King Hiram's tomb. Long before the rise of empires like Rome or Egypt, there was a civilization of incredible influence. This civilization was the Phoenicians. Among the many fascinating discoveries tied to the Phoenicians. One stands out, the tomb of King Ahiram. King Ahiram, a ruler of ancient Phoenicia, modern-day Lebanon, was buried in a grand tomb. Around 1000 BC, his sarcophagus, made of intricately carved stone, was found in the late 19th century in the city of Byblos. The tomb was uncovered in 1923, and with it came the discovery of the beautifully adorned sarcophagus, which would become a treasure for both archaeologists and historians. However, as the story goes, those involved in the excavation soon found themselves plagued by a string of unfortunate events. One of the first incidents occurred when the tomb was opened. Archaeologists reported that the moment the sarcophagus was disturbed, a heavy, oppressive feeling seemed to descend upon the site. Many of the workers, locals who had assisted with the excavation, became unnerved by the unease that filled the air. Some claimed they had heard strange sounds like whispers or distant cries echoing from deep within the tomb. Others spoke of a dark shadow that seemed to loom over the tomb, following them as they worked. This created an aura of dread around the entire excavation process, but the misfortunes didn't stop there. Several of the people who played significant roles in the excavation began to fall ill or suffered tragic accidents shortly after their involvement with the tomb. A prominent archaeologist who had overseen the uncovering of King Ahiram's sarcophagus reportedly fell gravely ill, and some accounts say he died shortly after returning to Europe. His family and colleagues couldn't explain the sudden illness. Other members of the excavation team suffered accidents, with some experiencing unexplained injuries. Even more chilling were reports of inexplicable deaths among individuals connected to the tomb, whether directly involved in the excavation or not. These events led to the creation of a chilling local legend about the tomb. The story suggested that King Ahiram, in his afterlife, was angry at the disturbance of his final resting place and had unleashed a curse on those who had dared to open his tomb. Local folklore surrounding the tomb spoke of a powerful curse that could strike down anyone who tampered with the grave of a king. Some believed that the curse had been etched into the sarcophagus itself, and that by disturbing the tomb, archaeologists had awakened the wrath of Ahiram's spirit. Others felt the curse was simply a way to explain the strange misfortunes that followed the excavation. The tomb of Hezi in ancient Egypt, more than 4,000 years ago, there was a man named Hezi, a high-ranking official who played a significant role in Egyptian society. Because of his high status, Hezi was honored with a magnificent tomb in the vast necropolis of Saqqara, not far from the pyramids. Hezi's tomb is a mastaba, a type of rectangular, flat-roofed structure that served as a precursor to the more famous pyramids. These tombs were typically built for the elite, providing a grand resting place that reflected their social standing. But among the carvings, there's something even more intriguing: inscriptions that serve as warnings. These are the protective curses placed to safeguard Hezi's tomb from would-be intruders. In ancient Egypt, tombs weren't just burial places. They were gateways to the afterlife. The Egyptians believed that the soul or car needed protection to journey safely to the next world. To ensure this, they left offerings of food and drink, built elaborate tombs, and wrote protective spells and curses. Hezi's tomb contained such curses, inscribed with clear warnings to anyone who might disturb his eternal rest. One inscription might threaten divine retribution. As for anyone who shall do harm to this tomb, the god shall bring judgment against them, and their name shall be erased from memory. These curses were no small matter. In ancient Egyptian belief, having one's name erased was considered a fate worse than death. Without a name, the soul could not live on in the afterlife, effectively condemning it to eternal oblivion. The curse of King Casimir. King Casimir IV Jagiellon was a powerful and respected ruler of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania during the 15th century. When King Casimir died, He was laid to rest in a grand tomb inside Wall Cathedral in Krakow, Poland, for centuries. The king's tomb remained untouched, protected by its location in the cathedral. However, in 1973, a team of archaeologists and scientists decided to open the tomb as part of a historical investigation. What they discovered, however, was far more unsettling than they could have anticipated. At first, everything seemed to be going well. The team carefully documented the contents of the tomb, taking great care to preserve the artifacts and remains. However, shortly after the tomb was opened, strange and tragic events began to unfold. Within days of the excavation, several members of the research team began to fall seriously ill. Their symptoms were sudden and severe, including fever, respiratory distress, and other complications. Shockingly, many of these illnesses led to death. By the time the excavation was complete, a total of 15 researchers who had been involved in the project had died unexpectedly. The speed and severity of these deaths sent shockwaves through the scientific community. People began to speculate that the researchers had been victims of a curse, an ancient spell, cast to protect King Casimir's tomb from intruders. The idea of a curse took hold, and it didn't take long for stories to spread about how the king had foreseen such an intrusion and ensured that anyone who disturbed his peace would face dire consequences. Colonel Buck. In a small, quiet town in the American Midwest, there is an eerie tale that has been passed down through generations. It's the story of Colonel Buck, a figure whose death remains shrouded in mystery and whose tombstone became the center of a chilling local legend. Colonel Buck was a man of prominence in the 19th century, a respected figure. He had served in the military, and his later years were marked by a reputation for being a wealthy landowner and businessman. When Colonel Buck died, something strange started to happen. A small, dark stain began to appear on his tombstone, a stain shaped strangely like a human leg. It wasn't just an oddity in its appearance, but also in how it seemed to grow and change over time. Locals who passed by the tombstone couldn't help but whisper about it. Some claimed that it was a result of some natural process, like the weather or the stone's natural wear, but others insisted it was something far more sinister, a warning left behind by forces beyond explanation. According to one version of the story, the stain on the tombstone was the result of a curse, a curse supposedly placed on Colonel Buck by a local witch before his death. The legend goes that Colonel Buck had wronged this witch in some way. Furious, she placed a curse on him, declaring that he would never truly rest in peace and that his grave would bear the marks of her vengeance. In some versions, it said that the witch had the ability to curse a person's soul even after death, and that the stain was her final act of revenge. Others suggest that the witch herself died shortly after placing the curse, but not before her wrath left its mark on Buck's tombstone. As time passed, the stain only grew darker and more pronounced, becoming almost unmistakable in its leg-like shape. It was said that whenever someone visited the grave at night, they could feel an unnerving chill in the air, as if something was watching them. William Shakespeare, widely regarded as one of the greatest writers in the English language, has left behind a legacy that is timeless. But along with his unparalleled contributions to the world of drama, Shakespeare's final resting place carries a curious and eerie story that blends his literary genius with a dash of superstition. Shakespeare died in 1616 and was buried in the chancel of Holy Trinity Church in England. His tomb, like many in the era, carries an inscription that is both poetic and unsettling. The lines on his gravestone are direct and rather foreboding, warning anyone who might consider disturbing his final resting place. The inscription reads, "Good friend, for Jesus' sake forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones." The warning is blunt, Anyone who dares to disturb his grave will be cursed. Shakespeare, with his sharp wit and poetic flair, seems to be warning everyone not to meddle with his remains. This curse is not subtle. He's not simply asking for respect. No, he's invoking divine punishment on those who would move his bones. In 1792, the poet's tomb was opened to allow a monument to be placed over it. When the tomb was opened again in 2008, the bones were left undisturbed, but some reports suggest that they might have been moved during previous excavations. This has sparked controversy, with some suggesting that disturbing Shakespeare's remains might have led to the fulfillment of his curse. It's a delicate balance between preserving the integrity of Shakespeare's tomb and the desire to understand more about the man behind the works. The church itself, where Shakespeare is buried, is a historical landmark, and any invasive study could risk damaging a site of immense cultural importance. The fear of triggering the curse has, in some ways, become a deterrent. Serenput the first was a powerful official in ancient Egypt during the Middle Kingdom, a period that lasted from around 2055 to 1650 BC. He held the important title of governor of Elephantine, a region near modern-day Aswan in southern Egypt. Today, his tomb remains one of the most impressive and intriguing burial sites from this era. While Serenput I's tomb is a treasure trove of ancient history, it has not been without its share of dark legends. Like many tombs from ancient Egypt, Serenput's burial site has become the subject of stories about curses and the potential consequences of disturbing such sacred places. In ancient Egypt, there was a widespread belief that disturbing the tombs of the dead could anger the gods and bring misfortune to those who dared to intrude. This belief was not limited to the tombs of pharaohs, but extended to the graves of high-ranking officials and nobles like Serenput. For centuries, the tomb at Kubit el-Hawa remained undisturbed, perhaps in part because of the fear surrounding these ancient curses. The idea of a curse is common among Egyptian tombs, particularly those from the Middle Kingdom and New Kingdom periods. These tombs were often inscribed with warnings and threats, telling would-be grave robbers or curious explorers that disturbing the resting places of the dead would bring about divine retribution. The curse on Serenput's tomb may not have been as famous or dramatic as the one associated with Tutankhamun's tomb, but it was still a powerful deterrent. Local legends tell of misfortunes that befell those who were involved in the excavation and study of the tomb. Some believe that the tomb, like many others, was protected by the powerful forces of the ancient Egyptian gods, and that disturbing it would invoke their wrath. The tomb of Timur. Timur was a 14th century warlord of Turco-Mongol origin who carved out a vast empire, stretching from modern-day Iran to parts of India, Central Asia, and beyond. Timur's death in 1405 marked the end of his conquests. He was buried in Samarkand in a magnificent mausoleum called the Giri-Amr, meaning tomb of the king. For centuries, his resting place remained undisturbed, shrouded in mystery and local legend. Fast forward to 1941. The world was already deep in the throes of World War II when a team of Soviet archaeologists, led by Mikhail Gerasimov, decided to excavate Timur's tomb. However, the locals were horrified. They warned the archaeologists not to disturb the tomb, citing an ominous inscription carved into it, "Whoever opens my tomb shall unleash an invader more terrible than I." This was no idle threat. Timur's reputation as a fearsome conqueror loomed large, and many believed that his spirit would exact revenge on anyone who dared to disturb his eternal rest. Despite the warnings, Gerasimov and his team pressed on. On June 19, 1941, they opened the tomb and uncovered Timur's remains. As they examined the skeleton, they confirmed that Timur had been a tall and powerful man, fitting the descriptions of the warrior king. Then, just 2 days later, on June 22nd, 1941, Nazi Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. The timing was uncanny, and many began to wonder if the curse of Timur had come to pass. The Nazi invasion was catastrophic, bringing immense suffering and destruction to the Soviet Union. Cities were bombed, millions of lives were lost, and the war effort pushed the country to its limits. It seemed as if the ominous inscription on Timur's tomb had been fulfilled in the most devastating way. Was it a mere coincidence, or was there something more at work? The timing was too perfect or too chilling to ignore. The legend of Timur's curse quickly spread, capturing the imagination of people around the world. Even among Soviet officials, the idea of the curse gained traction, and it was said that Stalin himself ordered a resolution to the issue. In 1942, as the tide of war began to turn against Germany, Timur's remains were quietly reburied in Samarkand. The ceremony was conducted with great respect, following Islamic burial traditions. Interestingly, not long after the reburial, the Soviets began to achieve significant victories on the battlefield, starting with the turning point at the Battle of Stalingrad. And there you have it, some of the most mysterious and intriguing cursed tombs that have both fascinated and frightened researchers for centuries. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of cursed tombs, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an exciting new video.